Hey, let me do my completely spoiler-filled sum up of Dissolution by C.J. Sampson, number one in the Shrdlk kind of Tudor mystery series, where Matthew Shrdlk is one of Cromwell's men and has been sent to a monastery that Cromwell is going to dissolve, basically take for Henry VIII to enrich Henry VIII and his cronies' coffers in their kind of quest of a reformation, of creating a new social order, but also just sort of consolidating English king's power. And Yes, and he's been sent there because the commissioner before had been murdered, and they want to find out what's going on because it's like a direct challenge to the king's authority, king's power. And I've taken you through all the various suspects, and basically, it's one. And this is all spoilers because I'm going to talk away all the way to the end of the book. Is yes, A, there's two murderers, and B, that one of those murderers was Alice, the woman, who at a certain point in the book did say something about being a woman and no one really particularly paying attention to a woman. And indeed, Shrdlk himself did not pay attention to Alice, or at least did not consider her worthy enough of a not worthy enough, but just didn't consider her as a suspect. And it turns out that her lover was Mark Smeaton, one of the men who got convicted of being in a cheating with Anne Boleyn, of being cuckolding the king. And these being, as kind of historically acknowledged, trumped up charges to get Henry out of the marriage. And at least in this book, it's kind of fascinating because Cromwell is a character in this book, and in this book, it's presented as it was Cromwell's idea, and he served it up to the king, and maybe the king did or didn't think it was the idea. In various other things, you can see it's been presented as the king's idea, which Cromwell then executed. I guess it's a matter of degrees whether you want to let Henry VIII off on the whole matter or not. But basically, Mark Smeaton was her lover, someone she grew up with and was his swain. She had talked about the swain that died, and it turns out the swain was Mark Smeaton, and that the commissioner Singleton, who was the one who was murdered, was used by Cromwell to paired them off to each of the men to kind of figure out the story, and they got Smeaton to confess, promising him, "Oh, well, if you confess, the king will pardon you." But of course, he did not. And Shrdlk figures this out of like, who is the final visitors to him. It's like, yeah, it's a description of her, and the sword. This sword that was made by Smeaton's father came to her mother, and then to her. And she held on to it, and when she saw him, she's like, yes, I'm going to dispense my justice, and I'm not sorry about it at all. And it's interesting that his companion on this thing, Shrdlk's companion, the young man who really does see this as a horrible kind of hypocrisy of this thing of like, you're saying that the Catholic Church is horribly corrupt, but you're basically plundering the Catholic Church for the enrichment of Cromwell, Henry VIII, and the cronies around it. It's like, it's no better. Maybe it's going to be worse. Who knows? It's just going to be old boss, same as the new boss, same as the old boss kind of stuff. And he's really disillusioned by it, the torture that has gone on. The Carthusian, Jerome was in the tower at the same time, and indeed had told the story of Mark Smeaton earlier, and I guess it was his way of digging it in, because he had recognized who Alice was, that she was the lover, and he probably knew that she is the one who had killed him already. So But his companion Mark decides, no, I'm not going to. And they those two escape. And it's assumed that they're lost in the marshes, but they get a letter later, and it's like, no, that is not the case. And the letter comes to Brother Guy, who Shrdlk has promised, like, oh, maybe I'll try and get you, kind of see if I can get you a position in the city, because you're a Firmicarian. You can just go by Guy now, not his Arabic name, and but not Brother Guy anymore. And you kind of get this kind of whole, oh, it's going to be the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Now, the second murderer is Brother Edwig, the purser, who Shrdlk kind of curses himself because, like, I really didn't like this guy, but because I didn't like him, maybe I was more cautious in trying to convict him. And indeed, what he'd been doing is he'd been selling lands without anyone's knowledge, using the abbot's seal, which is left in an unlocked room, to amass a fortune. He seems to have a real psychological thing. Like, it was like, I'm so penny perching because it's for God, for God, for God. But there seems to be a whole thing of he's kind of tortured by the idea of all the blood he's seen, and by all the stuff he's done. Which one of those things he did was, for such a buttoned down guy, I guess he was such a buttoned down guy because he was kind of a raging psychotic. He killed the young girl who had come earlier, who had been there the first time, had snapped her neck in one of his kind of fits of lust and passion. And now he was going to steal all this money to take to France to give to the church to buy his own forgiveness, which, even by the, I think, standards of the Catholic Church at the time, is just like, okay, that's a little la la lulu land. He was definitely insane. He and Shrdlk end up at the top of a bell tower in, and I don't know, when you get a hunchbacked main character up in a bell tower, kind of got a little bit of Hunchback of Notre Dame going on there. And it's interesting that our murderer is someone with a stutter. So we have kind of two people of kind of with disabilities, cast as the hero and the villain of this piece. I'm not quite sure what that says about stuff, what that says about the thing. I think that Shrdlk is such the moral, always human being character in this book. Slightly takes the curse off of that, though it's like the stutter, kind of there being a little thing of the kind of mental illness and us having a stutter being a part of that. I don't know. So, I definitely did see Alice pretty early on as like, oh, we're discounting her a little too easy. Yeah, it's going to be her. Brother Edwig, less so, but it was like kind of, okay, financial double dealings. It's not that surprising that it was her. Shrdlk ends up definitely on the outs. He is Cromwell is displeased with him, and Cromwell definitely comes off as definitely the heavy kind of thuggish in this book. He ends up getting reamed out by Henry, which he does not take kindly to, and sends Shrdlk back for the ripping down of this church, which is seen as maybe slightly a thing of like, you had a trauma here, go take a look at it, look at this kind of thing. Which in what does he end up doing? He ends up talking to Brother Guy, who is now just going to be Guy, and he's going to do private practice and try and stay out of all this stuff, which somehow I think will not be the case. I think he got out, but they'll pull him back in, will be the thing. But very much kind of a thing of characters in this book who are just very much, it's warring factions, and we're caught in between them. And it's like, they're both sides are so fervently, we are the best, and the people inside are just like, in the middle, the common folk, people like Shrdlk, are just like, oh God, neither side. It's like this. There's all this chaos, and there's these two two warring sides that are going to just squash us between them. It's a book that's deeply cynical of that, deeply suspicious of all this fervent belief of yeah. So yeah, those are my thoughts on disillusionment. Definitely a lot of disillusionment going on here in this novel by C.J. Sampson, and I'll probably try and do a semi-proper review of it, thinking about especially Cromwell. I can talk about Cromwell quite a bit with my Hilary Mantel and Cromwell Revolutionary Life by Darmid McCulloch. Those things, and now this kind of an interesting little addition to it, as varying views of Cromwell and of this time, and what is the ramifications of all of this on our world today, and just on the ideas of belief. I mean, it definitely the battle between the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant world definitely has had a big. It kind of plays out even in my own family with a Roman Catholic mother and a Protestant father, and that kind of made for nothing in between for me. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I will talk to you later. More videos later.